Most people assume the Stoics were suspicious of wealth. They imagine philosophers rejecting money, living with almost nothing, treating financial success as something beneath them. The reality is more complicated. Seneca was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. He owned estates. He moved among the political elite. He advised emperors. By the standards of his time, he possessed extraordinary wealth. And yet he spent a remarkable amount of his writing discussing the dangers of money. Not because money itself was dangerous, because people's relationship to it often was. The Stoics never argued that wealth was bad. They argued that becoming dependent on wealth for your sense of security creates a problem that no amount of money can solve. This is where Stoic philosophy separates itself from much of modern financial advice. The goal is not to accumulate endlessly. The goal is to build a relationship with money that serves your life rather than quietly governing it. Seneca understood something that many people discover only after years of chasing larger numbers. More money can solve financial problems. It cannot automatically solve financial anxiety. By the end of this video, you will have a framework for thinking about money that removes the anxiety without removing the ambition. You earn more than you did 5 years ago. Maybe significantly more. You remember a version of yourself that would have been shocked by your current income. And yet, something strange happened along the way. The number changed. The feeling did not. The financial anxiety that once attached itself to smaller numbers simply followed you upward. A raise arrived. The relief lasted briefly. Then a new standard appeared. A new expectation. A new definition of what would finally feel safe. You tell yourself that security is just beyond the next milestone, the next promotion, the next salary increase, the next account balance. But the destination keeps moving. What makes this exhausting is not always the obvious stress. It is the constant background hum, the mental bandwidth occupied by money even when there is no immediate financial problem to solve. You are having dinner, and part of your attention is calculating. You are on vacation, and part of your attention is forecasting. You are trying to focus on work, and part of your attention is wondering whether you are doing enough. The anxiety becomes so familiar that it starts to feel responsible, as if worrying is proof that you are taking your future seriously. And because of this, decisions begin to come from scarcity thinking, even when scarcity is not actually present. You hesitate over opportunities because losing feels unbearable. You make purchases to relieve stress rather than solve needs. You compare your financial position to people who are operating under completely different circumstances. Sometimes you even delay enjoying things you already have because your mind is busy preparing for problems that may never arrive. The strange part is that from the outside, everything appears stable. The bills are paid, the income is good, the future is not collapsing. But internally, money occupies far more space than it deserves. Not because there is too little, because there is never enough certainty. This is where Seneca becomes particularly interesting. Unlike many philosophers who spoke about wealth from a distance, Seneca lived inside it. He was Nero's advisor. He held immense political influence. He accumulated extraordinary wealth and became one of the richest men of his era. Naturally, critics accused him of hypocrisy. How could someone preach simplicity while owning multiple villas? How could someone discuss moderation while living among the elite? Seneca's response reveals the heart of his philosophy. He never argued that wealth was inherently wrong. He argued that dependence was. A person can possess wealth without being possessed by it. A person can enjoy comfort without requiring comfort. A person can have resources without building their identity around them. This distinction appears clearly in one of his most famous observations. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Seneca, Letters to Lucilius. Notice what he is attacking. Not money, not success, not ambition. The target is craving, the endless psychological state where security remains permanently out of reach, regardless of the amount acquired. Because craving operates differently from need. Need has a limit. Craving constantly expands. Every achievement becomes a baseline. Every milestone becomes ordinary. Every gain creates a larger appetite. Seneca understood that the real danger was not financial insufficiency. It was training the mind to believe that satisfaction always exists one acquisition further away. The encouraging part is that craving is learned, which means it can also be unlearned. Imagine someone whose income increases every year. They earn more, save more, accumulate more. On paper, their financial situation keeps improving, yet their anxiety scales almost perfectly with their income. Every raise creates a new floor, a new lifestyle, a new standard that must now be maintained. Soon, the number that once seemed substantial feels ordinary, then insufficient, then concerning. Consider a specific decision. They are thinking about investing a significant amount of money. From the outside, the choice appears rational. Internally, however, the conversation sounds different. What if I don't do enough? What if everyone else knows something I don't? What if I miss an opportunity? What if this is the decision that sets me back? Notice what is driving the process. Not strategy, not clarity, anxiety. The decision becomes an attempt to reduce uncertainty. And because uncertainty can never be fully eliminated, the mind never receives the reassurance it seeks. Now, imagine someone earning the exact same income. The circumstances are almost identical, but this person has completed what we might call the Senecan exercise. They know their actual number, not the number that represents luxury, not the number that represents prestige, the number that represents genuine security. They understand what they truly need to maintain stability. Everything above that baseline is recognized for what it is: surplus. That changes the emotional texture of financial decisions. They still plan, they still save, they still invest. But the decisions come from a different place. Suppose they are evaluating the same investment opportunity. The question is no longer, what if I fall behind? Instead, it becomes, does this align with my long-term plan? One question emerges from fear. The other emerges from clarity. The outcome may even be identical, but the internal experience is completely different. Clarity feels quieter than people expect. It does not feel euphoric. It does not feel like certainty. It feels like the absence of unnecessary conflict. The mind is no longer arguing with itself. The decision is made, documented, and released. Because the purpose of money is being fulfilled, it is serving the plan, rather than becoming the source of endless emotional negotiation. Step 1. The Seneca baseline. Calculate the number that represents genuine security. Not comfort, not aspiration, not the version of life you would ideally like to have. Security. The amount required to meet obligations, handle reasonable disruptions, and maintain stability. Most people have never identified this number. As a result, every financial decision gets evaluated against vague feelings rather than clear criteria. Once the baseline becomes visible, something changes. You stop asking whether you have enough. You start asking whether a decision moves you closer to or further from genuine security. That distinction creates calm where ambiguity used to exist. Step 2. The acquisition audit. For the next 30 days, before any non-essential purchase, ask one question inspired by Seneca. Would I still want this if nobody knew I owned it? The question is surprisingly revealing. Sometimes the answer is yes. The purchase reflects genuine usefulness or enjoyment. Other times the answer exposes something different. Status, comparison, validation, the desire to communicate something about yourself. The purpose of the exercise is not to eliminate spending. It is to identify motivation, because decisions become clearer when their real drivers are visible. Step 3. The wealth identity separation. Seneca occasionally practiced living with less than he could afford, not because he wanted poverty, because he wanted freedom from fearing it. Periodically imagine, in concrete terms, a simpler version of your life. What would remain? What would still work? What skills, relationships, and capabilities would continue to exist? This exercise weakens the belief that your entire well-being depends on maintaining a specific number. Common objection: this sounds like I'm supposed to want less. Not necessarily. The Stoic goal is not smaller ambition. It is reduced dependence. You can pursue significant financial goals while remaining emotionally independent from whether they arrive exactly as planned. The objective is not less wealth. It is less fear. Return to the person who earns well but still feels financially tense. The numbers may already be larger than they once imagined, yet money continues running quietly in the background, consuming attention even when no immediate problem exists. Seneca's framework changes the relationship before it changes the balance sheet. Security becomes something defined rather than endlessly pursued. Decisions become guided by principles rather than reactions. Money remains important, but it stops occupying every corner of thought. The goal was never to eliminate ambition. The goal was to prevent ambition from becoming anxiety. Wealth is useful. Peace of mind makes it usable. Own the money. Don't rent your mind to it. Still forward.